Hi, everyone. I'm Beverly Harzog, host of Your Personal Economy. You can't control what goes on in the world in terms of inflation, but you can control your own personal economy. And I'm going to show you just how to do that because the way you spend your money is the way you spend your life. And I want you to have the best life possible. Thank you for joining me for episode number 25, How the Economy Impacts Your Wallet. First up, I am going to discuss current inflation numbers and why prices are still so high. I know you've been hearing, oh, maybe we've conquered inflation. Really? Well, then why are prices so high? My explanation up next. The Consumer Price Index tells us how much prices rise over the course of the past year. Now, that number for the 12 months ending July 2024 is 2.9%. That means prices went up 2.9% over the past year. And that doesn't sound so bad, does it? The target rate for the Fed is 2% inflation rate. Okay. So we're not that far from that. So why are prices so high? You've probably been hearing some so-called experts say, hey, I think we've beaten inflation now. But inflation itself isn't really the issue. It's the prices. Okay. When inflation slows down, prices still go up. Okay. They still went up 2.9%, but they just go up at a slower rate. In 2022, the inflation rate was 8%. Now, what happens when you have several years like this where inflation is very high? It results in high prices because it's cumulative. Okay. So it's not just 2.9 added to the price that it was 5 years ago. No, it's added to the prices that have already increased. All right. So that's why prices are so high. I decided to take a look at ground beef because everybody likes to buy ground beef. It's easy. It's supposed to be cheap. If you can't afford steak, you can still always get ground beef, right? You can stretch it out in casseroles, all kinds of good stuff you can do with ground beef. Now, ground beef since January 2021 has increased 38%. And this is the result of high prices going up over the course of several years. And that's why it's so expensive. And that's how inflation impacts your wallet. So, what causes all this inflation? Okay, it has a lot to do with government spending. Too much of it. Okay. Do you remember during the pandemic, we got stimulus checks? Well, during that period of time, and it was an emergency, we printed money, okay, and that increased the money supply. And when the money supply is increased, you've got too much money chasing too few goods, and that makes prices go up. So I just want to give you a little example so you can get an idea of how excessive the spending has been over the past few years. All right, the average salary for an American right now is around 75,000. Yeah, your personal experience may be very different. You may be in a dual income family, so you've got a lot more than that, or you personally might make a whole lot more or a whole lot less than that. So this is just an example based on an average. Okay, so your take home pay would be around 4,700. So let's round that up to 5,000. So as long as you stay under that 5,000, okay, you spend less than you make, you're going to be in good shape. You're not going to have to go into debt. So what happens if you spend more than you make? Okay, that's when things go wrong. Okay, in 2023, as you can see, I've really done my homework for all this. In 2023, the US government took in as revenue $4.44 trillion. So we're really increasing the amount of money we're talking about here. Now for spending, okay, keep this in mind, 4.44 trillion. That's the revenue. We spent 6.13 trillion. So that's a deficit of 1.7 trillion for 2023. When we have a deficit like this, we have to pay interest on it. Okay. And it just makes everything more expensive. Okay, so that's why we're experiencing a rough economy right now. So even though inflation has gone down a little bit, we're still looking at all these high prices. And so when you hear people in Washington talking about, "Oh, I wanna do this program, I wanna do that program," well, your first reaction should be, "How are you paying for that?" And I've had that reaction a lot lately because we're in an election year and presidential candidates and their surrogates are out, you know, kinda talking about their policies. We're not seeing a whole lot of policy. I think we're gonna see more after the debate next month. But I do have some takes on what we've heard so far, and that's coming up next. During the next couple of months, as we get more information on the presidential candidates and their specific economic policies, I will be doing episodes covering them. I am an independent voter, okay? I don't like any politicians. So you are going to get my unbiased take on whether or not a policy is good for the economy, which is good for your wallet, or if it's bad for the economy and your wallet, okay? And I don't have favorites. I'm just going to tell you exactly what the facts are because my job isn't to tell you who to vote for. My job is to give you the facts so that you can make up your own mind based on your personal situation and what your personal preferences are and what you believe, okay? And I respect that. I want people on both ends of the political spectrum, the entire thing, to feel comfortable listening to my podcast because I respect your viewpoint. But I'm not going to pull any punches on this. So let's get started. And I'm going to start with Harris because we've just been talking about grocery prices. So she has come forth with a sort of proposal. We don't know the details yet. To do some sort of price controls because she says that grocery stores are price gouging. I really don't think they are. And the reason is because they operate on a profit margin of around 1% to 3%. Okay. There's not a lot of room for gouging in that. And remember, they do have to make a profit. They're not nonprofits. Okay. They do have to make a profit. They have employees, they have benefits they have to provide. So if you want to be sure that people who work for grocery stores get paid good wages, they need to be able to set their own market prices. Okay. So what happens with price controls? And this is why I don't like them. It's been tried in several different countries, okay, and it has never worked. Not ever. Okay. And while I understand the intent behind this, it just doesn't work in the real world in terms of how economics work. And one thing that policies like this fail to consider is human behavior. Okay. So, what we've seen in history with price controls is that it leads to hoarding. Okay. Because the items that are being controlled, they become scarce. Okay. Because stores are not going to want to carry them because they can't make money on them. Okay. And remember, they are for profit companies. Okay. So you've got hoarding, you've got scarcity, and scarcity can lead to starvation of a public. So you've got to be very careful with policies like this. Now, I'll give it another look when I can see more details on it. So I don't like the idea in general, but I keep an open mind through everything. So we are going to see what the details are on that. Another thing that Harris has proposed is increasing corporate taxes and unrealized gains on capital gains. So that's something I need more details on before I can comment on. On the surface, I see how this could cause some problems, but I want to know what the details are. What are the limitations? And these are the kinds of questions you should be asking when you see these proposals. Don't just hop online and watch a TikTok video and say, oh, okay, now I know how that works. Well, maybe it works that way, maybe it doesn't. So get a couple of different opinions on that. Now let's go to Trump. All right. He has talked about eliminating taxes on Social Security benefits. Now, that sounds good, doesn't it? Okay. See, a lot of these things sound good. Okay. But in practice, it may or may not work. And see, now we're back to that pesky spending problem that the government has. All right, Social Security is funded by trust funds, and the money goes into the trust funds from like FICA taxes, taxes people pay on their Social Security payments. Okay. So if you're going to eliminate the taxes people pay on their benefits, and I love the idea, I just don't know how this could work, you have to replace that money somehow. Remember, how are you going to pay for it? And that's my question for Trump on that. I need to see more details on that. Another policy that they both have thrown out there, and I don't really care who threw it out there first. Okay. I actually think it came initially from Ron Paul, who was an independent back in the day. So, but anyway, all right. So, taxes on tips. Again, I like the concept, but if you're going to eliminate taxes on tips, what are you going to replace it with? You've either got to have new revenue to replace that, but ideally, you also want to cut spending somewhere else. Okay. And as you've seen, we've got that deficit last year of 1.7 trillion. We need to decrease a lot of spending to get ourselves out of that situation because it can't go on forever. Okay. Eventually, it's going to be very bad news for the economy. And so we do need to address that at some point. And I am hoping that the candidates will talk about that and what they plan to do about the deficit. I'd like to see some spending cuts, some responsible programs, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the rest of this all plays out. I'll be coming back to you to go over more policy issues as they become available. I just wanted to show you how some of these policies, if they're going to increase spending or do away with revenue, it can eventually impact your wallet, okay? Because that means prices will go up even more, okay? So that's why these conversations are important. And like I said, I keep an open mind and I look forward to reading and hearing about more details. I hope it's sooner rather than later. Thank you so much for joining me for episode number 25, How the Economy Impacts Your Wallet. And as I mentioned, during the next couple of months, I'll be revisiting some of these policies that are put forth out in the media, and I will be reporting on what the facts are. Coming up next, it's almost Labor Day. And you know what that means? There's a lot of sales, right? And you might be considering getting a big item. Well, in the next episode, I'm going to be talking about how to choose the best payment options while you're out there. And some of it can get kind of confusing. Some of it involves deferred interest payments or buy now, pay later. And you want to be sure that you know exactly what you're getting into and make the best decision. So I'll see you then.